Órale! Bienvenidos and welcome to the Familia FFP podcast. This is your host, Jorge Martin and Familia. We are on YouTube, NFL Insider Series, winding down, but we are finishing strong. Final two. One more after this one, but I tell you, we got a good one on hand. I mean, the Sports Illustrated folks have been coming through for us left and right, coming through once again here. But first off, I want to tell you, Familia, make sure this is the month of getting all your fantasy information. All you people who are coming back for redraft, fantasypoints.com. Go to fantasypoints.com. You get original content. Some of the best fantasy minds out there. You got John Hansen, Graham Barfield, Joe Dolan, Scott Barrett, Tom Brawley. I mean, some of the best, Wes Huber, and the NFL draft guide with Greg Cosell has been drastically reduced. So you get so much information on the rookies that is straight from the film room from one of the best, Greg Cosell's Familia. When you go to fantasypoints.com, make sure you put that promo code Familia22 if you want to do it in Spanish, Familia22. I'll get you 10% off, and I'm going to help you, and they're going to help you win your leagues. And we are here with this NFL Insider to help you win your leagues. Familia, I hinted at it. The Sports Illustrated, the people who are covering the teams have just been coming through left and right, and we are off to hot Atlanta today, and it is hot. And for this one, and we got joining us today, Daniel Flick of Sports Illustrated and Falcon Report. They're part of the Fan Nation. So he's all over the training camp news. He's bringing it to you, sometimes 2, 3, 4 stories in a day. He's putting out that content every day. His Twitter pick, though, it features the 818s, Max Fried. So as you guys know, this is Familia, our longtime viewers and listeners. I'm in the heart of the 818, born and bred. So Max Fried, fellow Valley boy. Hey, I gotta love that. Like, oh my God, from that one. So I want to get some information on that celebratory shot. But first off, I want to welcome in bienvenido to Daniel Flick. Muchas gracias for joining us, my friend.
Gracias. I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. Happy to be here. Really excited to talk some Falcons with you, man.
Oh no, it's awesome. Well, first off, I want to know that Twitter shot that you have of the Braves right there. What is I don't know where the sword comes from. What is the story behind that thing?
So there's a lot going on there. Okay, so first off, Max Fried. So that was the day he got a walk-off hit. If you remember that last year, yeah. So he had to pinch hit because here's the thing: he's a sneaky good hitter. Okay, sneaky good. He could probably hit 250. I'm not kidding. He's that good. So the Braves have an outfielder who his little deal after he gets a hit, and like the whole team kind of adopted it. It's a sword chop. So he goes huge chop. Okay, so he ended up getting like a real life sword last year in the middle of the season. So when Max had his walk off, this guy hops over the he just comes flying out of the dugout with the sword and just attacks Max with the sword. And then it was a crazy moment. A lot was going on. It was honestly, obviously, World Series champions. That was probably a top 5 moment of the season last year. Just so much fun all around. Because I think the Braves ran out of pinch hitters in that game. So like Max comes up there in the 10th, and you're like, well, here comes the 11th, right? And then Max, he hit that ball hard, man. Probably like 90, 95 miles an hour off the bat, right up the middle, line drive. Great moment. Love
that one. Now that's not Acuna. That's not Acuna.
Guillermo Heredia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he actually got optioned down to AAA a few days ago. So tough times for the sword, but nevertheless,
it gives a whole new meaning to Tomahawk Chop, doesn't it?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a pretty perfect fit too. Honestly, I wish they'd picked it up a little bit earlier.
Well, I'll tell you, with Max Fried being a good hitter, I don't know if you know this, but the guy who was his hitting guru growing up is Reggie Smith, who is an all-time great LA Dodger. And so just one of the greats. He still teaches. He's in his 70s, but still teaches hitting, gets kids gets kids ready. So there is a connection, even though the Braves beat the Dodgers in the playoffs last year. So they seem to lock up, and I know it's going to be happening. It could be happening again. They're both in first. The Dodgers are way out there. The Braves are in the fight with the Mets. So it's going to be fun.
For sure. You know what though? I think the Braves kind of had it coming last year after the way 2020 went with the 3-1 lead. Yeah.
Oh, we don't. I won't. You're my guest, so I'm going to be nice right now and and just and leave it at that. We don't need to talk about the 2020 World Champion Dodgers, 2020 Atlanta Braves, but I want to jump into the 2022 Atlanta Falcons, the team you cover.
Right.
It's a pretty big transformation since 2008. Matt Ryan has been the starting quarterback for all those years. I think 14 seasons. One of the best, one of the most durable players, MVP, almost Super Bowl champion. Sorry, I don't want to bring that one up, but sorry,
off to a flyer right here.
Yeah, sorry, Atlanta fans. We're still going to finish strong, but now we got a big change. Marcus Mariota, former number 2 pick, Heisman Trophy winner, Oregon. He had some big moments with the Titans, though he ended up losing his job and was a backup to Derek Carr the last couple seasons. How much of this is going to be a big transformation? Ryan, a pocket passer to Marcus Mariota as a that my kind of run pass option, kind of a dual threat quarterback. Can you tell me kind of how the offense is going to switch up, kind of change up this year?
Yeah. So here's the thing for me. In theory, I think you'll actually see the offense transform for the better with Mariota. I think Matt Ryan obviously is a little bit better of quarterback, significantly better, more accomplished everything than Mariota. But for what Arthur Smith wants to do, all the RPO stuff, some of the quarterback read option stuff, Mariota's a better fit than Matt Ryan is. So I think it's going to unlock some more quarterback run stuff. As a general rule of thumb for the offense, I think, shot plays have not been hitting so far in camp for the most part. Which Matt Ryan, his accuracy has been such a strong point for so many years now, that there's for sure a little bit of a give and take from Mariota and, to Ryan with, strengths and weaknesses, I would say. But for sure on the surface, I think you'll see Mariota's presence kind of open up the run game a little bit more. I think you'll see some of the underneath stuff that Arthur Smith loves to run, like drag routes, slants, all the short to intermediate stuff should still be there. I think you might see some of the explosiveness. Honestly, the Falcons didn't have much explosiveness last year anyways, right? But the little bit that was there, Matt Ryan's accuracy kind of helped carry it a little bit more. Mariota, I don't want to drift into another question here, but I'm personally a little bit higher on Mariota than some other people are because of his experience in Arthur Smith's offense. And it's important to realize here that they only have, I want to say, 2 receivers currently on the roster right now that were like contributors last year. So it's a new offense as far as faces and everything, but as far as the players there, it's not like it's going to be a big adjustment because a lot of these guys haven't played with Matt Ryan in Atlanta's system. So it's Mariota's all they're going to know for the most part. So I think that's a pretty big positive for sure.
And one of the things that was interesting about Mariota, I mean, that I saw in the limited action he had with the Raiders, he's still a threat to run.
Yeah.
Fantasy football loves. I mean, you mentioned that we talked off air about you've had a few drafts already. The importance of the running quarterback. How much? I mean, both scheduled and off-schedule plays could he be running this year?
I would tend to think designed runs probably not as heavy as off schedule. I think maybe you'll see a couple read options, maybe a couple draws, but probably not a ton of those. Probably I would guess you're going to see somewhere in the range of 5 to 8 runs a game by Mariota. In his time in Las Vegas, he was primarily a rushing threat for them. He played a lot of wildcat snaps there and things of that nature. Very, very physical, surprisingly, for his stature. But he for sure still has the athleticism. He's been making plays all throughout camp with his legs as well. So for the most part, off schedule. They're not. I don't think they wouldn't run him on schedule in camp with the contact nature of that, but. He has been making some plays. The nature of the Falcons' offensive line will tend to lead to some more off-structure plays, as is for him with his legs. But I do think that you'll probably see Atlanta's quarterbacks, whether it's him or Ritter, have a little bit more of a presence on the ground. From a fantasy perspective, probably it won't single-handedly make him fantasy relevant, but I do think it can certainly play a pretty big part in it, because I think he'll probably end up at the point where he's getting, like I said, 5 to 8 total, runs a game for probably in the neighborhood of 25, 30 yards, maybe. Nothing explosive, it won't be like Lamar Jackson or whatever. I think maybe like a Josh Allen light as far as rushing production, where, maybe he'll have a few weeks of some highs and then some other weeks where it's just not there. But I do think he'll have some maybe breakout performances with his legs at times throughout the year.
Yeah, and even 30 yards a game, that's going to be over 500 yards on over the course of the season. That could really make a difference on a fantasy roster. There's so much talk about them drafting Desmond Ritter, second quarterback taken in the NFL draft. Is this shaping up as a redshirt year for him, or what's?
So here's the thing with Mariota's contract. It's kind of like an option, basically. If the Falcons cut him after this year, they can save $12 million. He's only making like $6 million this year. So like the cap hit it's a big jump in cap hit. So as a regular rule of thumb, I'd say people are kind of expecting that he'll be one and done unless he just has a really, really good year. And I don't think the Falcons will go into next offseason with Ritter not knowing what he can do. So I wrote an article a couple months ago that I think there's a pretty solid chance Ritter takes over sometime week 12, 13, somewhere in that range. I want to say the bye week is week 14. The tricky part is the first game out of the bye is on the road in New Orleans, which is far from ideal for a rookie quarterback. Rivalry game, the environment, everything. And the week before is at home against Pittsburgh, which really, considering how good they are defensively, that's not much better, So they have a game, I want to say it's week 11. They play Carolina on Thursday Night Football, and then they come back and play Chicago the following Sunday. So it's like a mini bye week. I think you might see him play around then, but I think you'll see Ritter play this year, because unless Mariota just lights it up, and unless they're actually in the playoff race, which few, expect for the most part, they don't really gain anything by playing Mariota, week 15, 16, 17, and then rolling into camp next year, still not knowing what they have in Ritter. So I really think there's a chance he ends up playing around fantasy playoff time.
All right. Well, that's something that's going to be interesting, because he's a dual threat threat quarterback himself. So that is, and for dynasty, for those people who have him in dynasty, like I have him in a dynasty league. So something to keep an eye on, just to get a look see at him. So let's go into the running backs, which we talked a little bit off air. Cordarrelle Patterson was a revelation last year, kind of wore down at the end of the season. You got Damien Williams, you got rookie Tyler Allgeier taken in the 5th round, who Dane Brugler really liked last year. I think he had him as his number 4 running back in his rankings. I've been grabbing Allgeier kind of speculatively, thinking, Derrick Henry, he's a big back, over 220 pounds. Can you kind of make sense of this backfield for us?
Yeah. So here's the thing. Patterson, I think you'll see Patterson play a little bit more out wide this year than he did last year. I don't think he'll take on more than probably 10, 15 carries a game. I think for the most part, his role will be about what it was last year. I tend to think he might see a little bit of a regression in production. But opportunity-wise, I think he should get the same, if not a little bit more. Moving on, Allgeier, I think I've been drafting him in quite a few leagues as well, because I really think you'll see him as the season progresses. I think he'll start to become more the workhorse there in the backfield for them. They really like him. They're very, very high on him. They think he can become the guy moving forward. I think, there's a very solid chance that by about week 10 or so, he is the starting running back, I think. I mean, we see it every year, 5th round running back, 6th round running back, whatever. I mean, you had Robinson in Jacksonville, undrafted a few years ago, right? Outstanding year. It's so scheme dependent, right? Running backs are just so scheme and opportunity dependent. And I think if you look at Allgeier, he's in a perfect scheme for what suits his style. So he went to college in BYU. They run a whole bunch of wide zone offense there. I want to say like the most or second most in college football. Arthur Smith loves the wide zone. So he'll come in, awesome scheme fit, plenty of carries on the table. Arthur Smith loves to run the football. Patterson won't be a workhorse. And after Patterson, it's a big group. But I really think Allgeier, he's been separating himself at camp. They put pads on last week, and he's just been incredible. A really, really physical runner. He's been catching it pretty well out of the backfield too, which is a pretty big development for him in fantasy. But I really think there's a lot to work with there. I think Patterson should be a pretty big threat in the receiving game, I would say. But for me personally, talking fantasy, I tend to favor Allgeier, which is a bit of a bold take, kind of a hot take here on a Wednesday? Yeah. Coming out Thursday, is it? Yeah.
No, we're on Wednesday. Coming out on Thursday.
Yeah, coming out Thursday. Pretty big hot take here for 2:00 on a Wednesday, soon to be Thursday. So
I'll take it though. I mean, so many things are pointing in the direction. Rookie running backs, when they break out, it's usually in the, if it's not the rookie year, if it's not at the beginning of the rookie years, a lot of times it's that second half. They kind of get into the understand pass pro a little bit more. I mean, he's not a high round draft pick, so he's got to earn his spot. But yeah, I mean, really, who does he have to beat out? He's not Cordarrelle Patterson's a different kind of guy. Teams have been using a lot of like that satellite back, the run, the pass and rush threats in the rush and the passing game, and
wide back. I think they're on it now, right? Yeah.
Yes, a nod to the people a little bit north of us from here up in San Francisco with the Deebo Samuel. But Cordarrelle Patterson was very much a wide back last year. So so it's going to be that one. That's the thing about this team that I see is like the fantasy contributors are pretty concentrated, which gets me into the next the next group. And I'm actually gonna combine the pass catchers because I really see it's two guys kind of rising to the top among the pass catchers. It's the rookie Drake London, first wide receiver taken in the draft, and the all-world, expected to be all-world, Kyle Pitts, only the second 1,000-yard receiver, tight end, a rookie tight end ever. They're both big physical receivers. I mean, just ultra uber athletes. But can you kind of differentiate how the targets are going to come with them? And I do have a follow up on Pitts.
Yeah, I think I would trust Pitts quite a bit for the way that Atlanta's offense will work this year. I think he'll see a bunch of targets. I think London will probably end up being receiver one for them pretty much from the start. So I think you'll see those two lead the team in targets for sure. But, Pitts in particular, he's such a security blanket. I mean, underneath everything, he's such a versatile route runner. With just his frame, his athleticism, and everything, he can really do everything for you. But I think as far as progressions go, he'll probably be number one in just about every progression. I tend to think he'll be the guy on third down. I tend to think that he'll probably – I really, really think that he'll take a step up in touchdowns this year. I think, he's been asked about that all offseason, obviously. He had a quote a few weeks ago. He said, "That's up to God and Coach Smith," which is not confidence inspiring. That it's out of his hands. But I mean, it really kind of is. But I think, with London there, he'll get so much attention as well in the red zone. Bryan Edwards too. They traded for him from Las Vegas earlier this offseason. Really big red zone threat as well. So, last year they could really kind of key in on Kyle Pitts in the red zone, which hurt his production quite a bit. I really think you'll see a better opportunity for him and also more of a centered focus on him as well. as far as targeting him in that area. Because, I mean, he's been making plays all camp where he could be perfectly covered, and like he's 6'6", 30 whatever inch arms, huge wingspan, everything. You can be draped all over him and it's not going to matter. So I really think they'll capitalize on that a little bit more. You asked about target share. I really think that he'll probably get somewhere in that neighborhood of, I think he had 105 targets last year. I think he might get 115 or so this year, assuming he stays healthy. I think London could probably get somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 80, 90 targets, somewhere in that area as well, because I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit later, but the Falcons, like I mentioned, are not expected to win very many contests this year. So they'll be playing from behind quite a bit, I would imagine, passing quite a bit. I think there's going to be quite a few targets to go around. So I really think that London in particular, not sure he'll be the fastest starter, but I think as he gets acclimated to NFL speed and physicality, he'll be pretty good, I think, especially for the stretch run of fantasy playoffs too.
And that's the thing, rookie wide receivers have been sneaky good in the, when they breaking out in the second half of their rookie seasons. So that's definitely what I'm going to be keeping an eye on. And also, I love teams from the from the NFC South, because weather isn't often an issue unless you're playing outdoors in Carolina in November, December, and you get rain or occasional snow everywhere else, or you're not going to get weather in Tampa, and so that's why I always love guys in the that's why I used to love grabbing Drew Brees so often, because he always had a good schedule in the playoffs. The follow-up on Kyle Pitts that's interesting, and it's more the history of Marcus Mariota. Delaney Walker got a lot of work as a tight end, and is it almost something like could we be looking at that? You mentioned that an increase in targets. Is that a good history lesson to look at with a Mariota and Delaney Walker connection?
Yeah, I would say so for sure. As well with Mariota there, you can go back and just look at what he did with Arthur Smith with tight ends in 2019. Like it's kind of a rare circumstance where you have you got a second year coach, you got a quarterback who hasn't started since 2019, but they've got experience with each other, right? So it's the type of deal I'd say where you've got a very good history to look back on. And with Mariota, as a rule of thumb, he had some big connections with Waller in Las Vegas when he had his one big game playing, I think, the Chargers week whatever late in the season, 2020. Waller was a big target for him. Just looking back throughout his whole career, he's really, really zoned in on tight ends. And I think with the way Atlanta's offense works, Arthur Smith loves tight ends, Mariota loves tight ends. Kyle Pitts is one of the top tight ends in football. And with London on the outside, with Bryan Edwards on the outside, you've got so many talented guys there. You wouldn't think about it, but red zone in particular, you got so many good jump ball receivers on that team. So I think, end zone, red zone wise, very, very productive season, I think, coming for him. But just as an overall general overview of the season, for sure, I think, Walker's a very, very good measuring stick, I would say. Everywhere Mariota's been, he's loved tight ends. Everywhere Arthur Smith has been, he used to be a tight ends coach. I can't see them not using Pitts. And just looking at, further into that tight end room, Atlanta picked up Anthony Ferguson earlier this offseason. They picked up Michael Pruitt a few days ago. Other than that, there's not much there. So Pitts is going to play in the slot quite a bit. He's going to play in line quite a bit. He's going to be, the guy for a lot of the season. He'll be Mariota's guy for a lot of the season. They've had a pretty solid connection so far in camp. I really think the arrow is pointing up for him, though.
Outstanding. You got me fired up. Any sleepers on this offense, or is it going to be pretty concentrated?
I mentioned Bryan Edwards a few minutes ago. Yeah. That's where I would go. We talked a few minutes ago about some of the drafts that we've had. I've been seeing Bryan Edwards there late, like final few rounds late. I think there's a very good chance he ends up being, number 2 receiver, 17-game starter on the outside. Hard to beat that, that late in the draft, I'd say. He had 650 receiving yards a year ago in Las Vegas. Very, very big catch radius, very athletic guy. Big red zone opportunities for him, I think, are coming. He got hurt a few weeks ago in camp, so he hasn't been full contact for a couple weeks now. But I really think opportunity-wise, we're talking probably 60, 70 targets for him. So he'll get a chance for sure. And, obviously, we'd never want to hope for injuries or anything of that nature, obviously. But if Pitts or London were to, miss a game or two, Edwards is probably, top 2 target for this team. So I think for sure I would look at Bryan Edwards late as a very, very intriguing fantasy player.
Awesome. State of the offensive line. They're number 28 Pro Football Focus. Jake Matthews is considered kind of like a rock, kind of like a rock at the left tackle. You got Lindstrom at the right guard. I believe Coach Smith mentioned that those two are the rock solid guys.
Yeah.
Having 3 out of 5 be a question mark. How does this line shape up, especially considering the fact that Mariota is gonna, may need to be more mobile than he might expect, and someone would expect.
Yeah, it's a rough picture. They've got at center. The competition there is 2 guys who were on the team last year. Neither one were really, exceptional when they played. Matt Hennessy started all 17 games, but it was obviously not enough to inspire confidence that he could, have it pinned down for this year. They've been alternating every day, him and Drew Dahlman. That's going to run probably through the whole preseason. So, left guard right next to him there is, Elijah Wilkinson looks to have that spot pretty much locked down. The issue with Elijah Wilkinson, he's never played left guard in a game. He's never played on the left side of an offensive line in a professional game, or in college for that matter, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So, I mean, he's been a strictly right tackle, right guard guy for his whole career. So putting him in there left guard, it's going to be rough. I'd say he'll probably have quite a lot of pressure up the middle. Talking about Mariota here, which, that'll kind of make his passing lanes a little bit limited, I think, at times. Might make it a bit harder to escape a little bit and climb a little bit in the pocket. But, it's tough because right tackle Caleb McGarry was, I want to say, the league leader in sacks allowed last year, or tied for second, behind another Atlanta offensive lineman, who's now the backup left guard, Jalen Mayfield. But it's not – the overall makeup of the room, I'd say, is kind of limiting to the overall upside of the quarterbacks and the running backs in the room, which is why, as a rule, from what I've seen personally, Pitts has been the only one that's going really high in fantasy drafts, right? I feel like that's a pretty fair statement. But, it's tough when you've got 2/3 of your interior offensive line just shaky, and you've got, right tackle, strong side for Mariota, which is a positive, but, also very shaky. It's kind of a limiting factor, like I've been saying, but you kind of have to see him in the preseason, because I think Wilkinson might be able to be a bit of a solid piece for them, but it's really – I don't have confidence. I'll put it that way. I don't have much confidence.
It's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough. Yeah, especially when how important they are to the running game, and we're talking about Tyler Allgeier. So, well, fingers crossed. So the last football question, kind of how do they shape up against the run versus the pass? And I wanted to add, when you're talking about the pass, AJ Terrell, incredible cornerback, one of the best in the league. Is he going to travel with like the wide receiver 1, or is he going to play aside?
Yeah, that is the big question. So in camp, he's been shadowing Drake London a little bit. So he did it last year, week 17, against Stephon Diggs in Buffalo. So I think there's a chance that he does end up shadowing throughout the year. Last year, obviously, he was strictly on the boundary, which not ideal. But here's the interesting thing now. To answer your original question, they're going to be really good against the pass, I think, like really, really solid. I think secondary is probably the strongest unit on the whole team. So They signed Casey Hayward this offseason, which in my mind is a very underrated pickup. They've got Isaiah Oliver in the nickel, who was having a really good year last year before hurting his knee. At safety, they've got a couple of really, really young athletic safeties, Richie Grant, Jalen Hawkins, who I think are very, very encouraging, talented guys. Played last year quite a bit, but not as starters for the most part. They've had I feel like they've had very strong camps working with the first team. Richie Grant in particular has been awesome in coverage. Him and Terrell have been the only two guys who've been able to cover Kyle Pitts. So that's pretty noteworthy. The pass rush, the Falcons were so bad last year rushing the passer. I mean, they had 18 sacks last year. Second worst team in the NFL had 29. I mean, they were last by a big margin, So, I mean, they added a couple really solid pieces. I feel like Lorenzo Carter from New York had 4 sacks in his last 4 games last year. They were the only 4 he had all year, but nevertheless, he ended the year strong. So we're, hoping he can carry some momentum with him. They drafted Arnold Ebiketie in the second round this year, top 40. Drafted D'Angelo Malone in the 3rd round, I think like pick 82. So they've got some solid young pieces there on the edge, which I think will help. Against the run, you got all reliable Grady Jarrett inside. Same story for the last few years. Who's going to step up beside him? You don't really know. They've got Anthony Rush at nose tackle, who's like 6'5", 350, huge guy. They were supposed to have Eddie Goldman. He retired about 2 weeks before camp, which was not ideal, but nevertheless, second-year pro Taquan Graham's been starting on the defensive line. Linebacker core, Rashaan Evans is linebacker 1 for them, former Tennessee Titans player, has some familiarity in this game. But other than that, it's a pretty sketchy room behind him. So I think running defense as a whole is not shaping up too great. I would expect him to be probably bottom 10 in the league in rushing defense. Pass defense, I actually have high hopes. I think there's a shot they're top 10. I really think with Terrell, he's had an awesome camp as well. I mean, certified star at corner,
Yeah.
Hayward's been a really solid number 2 corner for a number of years in the NFL. There's some really, really good young players there too in the secondary. So I've got faith that the secondary as a whole can be solid, if not really good. I really think solid might be like the floor for them. So, week 1 playing Winston in Atlanta, I wouldn't start Jameis week 1. I'll put it that way. I would not start Jameis week 1.
Wow. Like that. Love it. Love definitive takes. So, Daniel, thank you so much. Want to kind of close up shop on a fun one. What are your favorite taco types or favorite Mexican food, whichever one you want to talk about?
Oh, you know what? I'll go with the Mexican food part of that. I've been getting lately. Is it carne asada?
Oh yes,
so good. Big fan. That's the go-to for me right now. Love the beans. I tell you what, guac has grown on me a ton lately.
Good.
It's very, very big fan. Very big fan. Long been a fan of the rice, but carne asada as a whole, I tried it for the first time probably 2-3 months ago, and I'm addicted now. So we got a really, really solid place a couple miles up the road here. Very, very good place. I think I'm a weekly visitor at this point, so it's incredible.
Do they know your name yet?
No.
I
You got
to keep going back.
The next step, isn't it?
Yep. Once they know your name and they've got your order already, it's like, oh, they don't even ask you what your order is and they bring it to you. That's when you know that it's good. And carne asada, one of my absolute favorites, probably my absolute favorite. So
that's good. You know what? If I come on next year, I'll hope to have a different answer for you there.
Oh man. Well, and if it's still the same one and you just added to it, no problem. No problem. Daniel, I appreciate it so much. Your time for jumping on with us. We've still got plenty of training camp, almost a month to pretty much about a month to the season. What are some of the things you have coming up?
Like on a personal level?
For covering the team.
Yeah, covering the team. So
Yeah.
I'll be in Atlanta for week 1, covering. That'll be my first ever time. Media box, everything. Pretty cool opportunity for me. Be covering all the preseason games and everything too. So, pretty neat opportunity for sure. Very excited about it. Long been a Falcons fan, so kind of be able to write about the team. It's really a dream come true.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, it's you're gonna be good. You're gonna be good. I've already seen your content. Familia, he's a good follow. Keep an eye on his work. He's gonna be up and coming. So you're gonna be seeing him for a long time. So Familia, eso es todo for our show. Special thanks to our special guest, our invitado, Daniel Flick. Muchas gracias for joining us. And to you, make sure, Familia, if you go to fantasypoints.com, put in that promo code Familia22 and get 10% off. You can find me at Jorge Martin 17. I put out my content out there all the time, shows like this, written work that's coming from familiaffb.com. Go there, or on Facebook and Instagram, Familia FFB. Otra vez, everybody. Thank you so much. One more team to go for our NFL Insider Series. Bittersweet, but it's definitely, we got a 1 month till real football is happening, so it's gonna be good. So once again, thank you again to Daniel, and to you, everybody. Remember,
Sure.
todos somos familia. Salud.